marsh health is not, the accretion rate is not necessarily a metric for marsh health. We know that the system is eroding and losing mass.
This is the train to Penn Station. The next station is Bayside. As you leave the train, please step over the gap between the train and the platform.
Welcome to New York City, home to over 8 million people, making it the most populous and most densely populated city in America. Home to the Statue of Liberty, the Empire State Building, the World Trade Center, and home to me. This marsh may seem out of place, but you can find all kinds of them all around the coast. They're in New York, Boston, New Orleans, San Francisco Bay Area, and not just in the US. You can find them all around the world. You can find marshes in Venice, Italy, Shanghai, China, Montevideo, Uruguay, London, UK. I can even call one my neighbor, here in Queens, New York City, right by the train station. At first I never knew what a marsh was, let alone that they were in my own backyard. But I had the opportunity to do research on marshes at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Here I learned a few things. 1. Marshes are a type of wetland, or an ecosystem that is regularly flooded by water. 2. Marshes differ from other wetlands, like, say, swamps, because of the type of plants that grow there and how much it gets flooded.
Wait, Lou, what time is it?
9:02.
Okay.
And 3. Tidal marshes flow with the tides, so they're the ones we often see on the coast, gaining and losing water as the ocean currents ebb and flow. Oh, and one more thing. Marshes are muddy. Whoa. I'm good. There are tidal marshes along some rivers, like the Hudson River in New York, where tides go so far up the river that it no longer becomes salty ocean water, but fresh water. These are the marshes I studied over the last few years, and they lend themselves so well to wildlife and biodiversity, as other marshes do, too. There he goes. So what are tidal marshes doing so close to our cities? Turns out, they're more than places for the birds and plants. They're for us too. While marshes provide habitat for fish, birds, and other cold creatures, they also absorb carbon, similar to how a forest and trees might. And because they're on the coast, they become a physical barrier between the harsh seas and the land we live on, protecting us and our cities. According to the UN, about 40% of the world's population lives within 60 miles of the coast. This is including major cities like New York. With sea level rising and storms like Hurricane Sandy becoming more unpredictable, We need a way to protect ourselves and our coasts. And that's where marshes come in. While we can't stop these storms, we can prevent the amount of damage they do. And marshes are a great way to do that. Luckily, some scientists and policymakers have already realized this.
I'll trust your calculation. 11.5?
There are already billions of dollars in plans to restore marshes along the Hudson River. But there is one problem. Marshes are starting to face the same challenge we are: staying above sea level. Marshes are drowning. At first it was by us. We used the land they once thrived on and filled them in for development and buildings. Now, sea level rise is the final kick to the gut as marshes try to gain enough sediment or sand and smaller rock material to stay above waters. Or they try to race inward to higher ground, but are stopped by our infrastructure or nature itself. I and a team of researchers at the UMass Amherst campus have been looking into marsh formation to see if we can help save them. We've conducted research along the Hudson River trying to learn how these marshes formed. And through the use of sediment cores, a type of depth record of the marsh, we can figure out a timeline for when and maybe even how these marshes were created.
So it's harder for clastic material to get in here, and so if the marsh is going to keep pace with sea level rise, it needs to find something else is going to compensate for the lack of plastics, which is going to be lower bulk density and more organic material. So there's just more water in this. When you dry out that stuff over there, you'll probably see a mass reduction of 60 or 70%. Here, when you dry it off, you might see 80% or 90%. This is an optical backscatter probe. It shines out a little bit of light and it measures how much scatters back and comes back to the receiver. And so in clear water, you won't get any backscatter. As the water gets more and more turbid and more sediment within it, you'll get a stronger backscatter signal. So this measures the amount of light that shines out and comes back to it.
With some historical satellite images, elevation data, age models, a lot of mud, and a little science, no magic, we found that more than half of the marshes along the Hudson River are likely man-made, and not on purpose.
Wow. Oh my gosh. This is insane.
These marshes were formed from various human activities, like dredging or digging a bunch of mud and dumping it on the side of the river that allows it to wash downstream and build a marsh. Or railroads. For example, along the east side of the Hudson River, a railroad was built in the 1850s. And at sites such as Tivoli North Bay, this railroad created a protective cove of sorts that allowed enough sediment to build up and create a marsh within a relatively short period of time. So, if we can make these marshes accidentally, imagine what we can do on purpose. These ecosystems are not as far away as we think. We are interconnected with them, even without knowing of their existence. We have our homes to thank for them. So, shouldn't we think of them?
Next station. The next station is Bayside. As you leave the train, please step over the gap between the train and the platform.